3 years, 1,095 days. No birthday call, no Christmas text, not even a word when my mother, his grandmother, passed away in February. I had made a kind of peace with that silence. Told myself it was just how things were now, that some gaps between fathers and sons get too wide to walk across. Then my phone buzzed on a Tuesday evening in October, 7:43 p.m., while I was eating leftover chili at my kitchen table in Maryville, and every wall I'd built crumbled in about 4 seconds. I didn't recognize the number at first, but I recognized who was behind it before the message even loaded. You don't forget your own son's contact card, even when he's deleted himself from your life. My hand was steadier than I expected when I picked up the phone. I read the message twice. Dad, saw the article in the business journal. Congrats on the sale. Brittany and I are getting engaged. We're holding the party at the Tennessean on November 14th. If you want to come, bring a gift, say $75,000. We've got deposits due. Family should help family. I set the phone face down on the table and sat there for a long time. No, I miss you. No, I'm sorry for the last 3 years. No, how have you been, Dad? Just a date, a venue, and a price of admission to my own son's life. Welcome to Dad's Pure Revenge. Get comfortable. This one's going to take you somewhere real. Hit that like button and drop a comment below. Tell me where you're listening from tonight. I promise you'll want to stay for every word. I should tell you what the Business Journal article was, because none of this happened in a vacuum. I spent 34 years building a land surveying and civil engineering firm in Maryville, Tennessee. Started it in a one-room office off Washington Street with a used transit level, and 2 employees I could barely afford to pay. By the time I sold it last spring, we had 22 staff, 3 survey trucks, and active contracts from Blount County to the Virginia state line. The Regional Business Journal ran a feature when the sale closed. Local firm sold to Regional Engineering Group for undisclosed sum, and apparently my son saw it shared on LinkedIn. That's what it took? 34 years of 60-hour weeks couldn't get him to call. But one headline about a sale, and suddenly family meant something again. My ex-wife Linda and I split 7 years ago. Quietly enough on paper, less quietly underneath. She got the house in Farragut, I kept my business. Somewhere in the years between the divorce and now, she'd raised our son to see me a certain way, the man who'd always been more married to his work than his family, the one who could have given more and chose not to. I don't know exactly what words she used. I know the result. My son started borrowing that lens. The real breaking point came 3 years ago. He'd gotten involved with an investment group out of Nashville. I won't call it a business because it wasn't one. It was a recruitment pyramid with a polished website and testimonials from people who'd gotten in early. He wanted me to co-sign a $60,000 personal loan to buy in at a founding partner level. I sat across from him at a diner off I-40 and told him I'd looked at the company's structure, their filings, and I wasn't going to put my name on that paper. He told me I'd never believed in him, that I'd rather watch him fail than see him succeed without my help. He left without finishing his coffee. That was the last time I saw him in person. I sat at my kitchen table after I read his text, and I did what I've always done when something's wrong and I don't have enough information yet. I made a cup of coffee and I started working the problem. In land surveying, when the measurements don't add up, you don't assume the land moved. You go back and check every benchmark, every instrument reading, every assumption you brought to the site, because the error is almost always somewhere in what you thought you already knew. I didn't hire anyone. I opened my laptop and started pulling public records the same way I'd pulled property records for 3 decades. It's the same skill, knowing where the information lives and being patient enough to go find it. Her name was Brittany Caldwell. 27 years old, according to a Facebook profile that was scrubbed clean of anything older than 18 months. No employer listed, no job. A lot of photographs at nice restaurants, a few at what looked like resort pools, and a handful with my son. Always her arm hooked through his, always her face turned perfectly toward the camera at the exact right angle. I found the first crack in a Georgia court record database. A civil judgment from Cobb County, 2 years old, in favor of a plaintiff who'd claimed that a woman named Brittany Caldwell had borrowed $22,000 from him during an engagement that ended abruptly when she relocated to Tennessee. The judgment was for the full amount. It was marked unpaid. I sat back and drank my coffee cold and thought, check the benchmark again. I found the second one in Ohio. Hamilton County court records, 3 years old. A different man, a different engagement. That one had lasted 14 months. The civil complaint was for $38,000. Money borrowed in small amounts over the course of the relationship, never returned. That case had settled quietly, terms sealed, but the original filing was public. The pattern in the pleadings was identical to Georgia. Woman enters relationship. Man has recently come into money, engagement is announced, deposits and expenses accumulate in the man's name, relationship ends suddenly. Woman relocates to another state. I printed every page, put them in a manila envelope, the same kind I used for survey plaque copies for 34 years. I want to be honest with you about what I felt sitting at that table at 11 o'clock at night, because it would be easy to say I felt vindicated or ready or quietly triumphant. I didn't feel any of those things. I felt a low, cold dread that had nothing to do with money. My son was next in line. He was already inside it, and he didn't know, and the woman who had her hooks in him had done this to at least 2 other men before him. I texted him back the next morning, "I'll be there. Let's do dinner before the party, just the 3 of us. I want to meet her properly." He agreed faster than I expected. The restaurant they chose was a Steakhouse on Gay Street in downtown Knoxville. Nice place. Dark wood paneling. Low lighting. The kind of menu where the prices aren't printed next to the entrees. I'd been there once before, years ago, for a contract signing that had taken 2 years to land. That dinner had felt like it mattered. So did this one. I arrived 8 minutes early and stood near the host stand and watched the door. They came in together. My son had put on a blazer. I'd seen him in a blazer exactly twice in his life, both times for job interviews. He looked good. He looked older than 29 in a way that moved something in my chest I wasn't prepared for. She walked in like she owned the room, not confident the way people are when they've earned something, confident the way people are when they've done this before and know how the room is going to respond. She spotted me before my son did and smiled, warm, practiced, calibrated to exactly the right temperature. "Mr. Whitaker," she said, extending her hand, "I've heard so much about you." I shook her hand and said it was good to meet her. The first 20 minutes were pleasant in the way that things are pleasant when everyone is pretending the thing underneath isn't there. She talked about how she and my son had met at a rooftop bar in Nashville, how she'd always wanted to see more of Tennessee, how much she admired men who'd built something from nothing. That last part she aimed directly at me with her eyes, like a camera finding its subject and holding. My son mostly listened. He poured wine. He laughed at the right moments. He didn't look at me the way he used to, that sideways look he'd had since he was a teenager, half challenge, half I know you see me. He looked somewhere slightly past me instead. Then she reached into her handbag and set a folded document on the white tablecloth. "We wanted to make this official," she said, as if that were a perfectly natural sentence for a first dinner. "Shane and I have talked about this at length, and we think the fairest way to handle the financial piece is to put it in writing. It's a family gift agreement, nothing complicated. The $75,000 goes toward the venue deposit and the honeymoon, and in exchange, we honor you in the wedding program as an official family contributor." An official family contributor. I looked at my son. He met my eyes for a brief moment and then looked down at his wine glass. "Brittany," he started. "We talked about this, babe." She said it lightly, easily. "The way you say something to someone you've already won an argument with, days ago in private." I kept both hands flat on the table. In surveying, when you're reading an instrument and the bubble won't settle, you don't force it. You let the ground tell you what it's telling you. You wait. "I'd like a few minutes alone with my son," I said. She smiled. "Anything you'd like to say to him, you can say to both of us. We don't keep secrets." "That's interesting," I said. Something moved behind her eyes. Just a flicker, quick as a compass needle finding north. She recovered immediately, but I'd seen it. I reached under the table and set the manila envelope in the center of the tablecloth between her document and the wine glasses. "Everything in that envelope is public record," I said, keeping my voice level and quiet. "Court filings from Cobb County, Georgia and Hamilton County, Ohio. 2 prior engagements, 2 men who lost significant money, 2 civil judgments, one of them still unpaid as of last week." I paused. "I spent 2 evenings pulling this. A process server could have found it in an afternoon." The table went very still. My son looked at the envelope. He didn't reach for it. Her smile stayed on her face, but it went somewhere else. Somewhere behind her eyes where it was doing calculations I wasn't supposed to see. "Those are someone else," she said. "Caldwell is a common name. There are plenty of Brittany Caldwells." "The dates of birth match," I said. "So does the physical description in the Ohio filing. There's also a photograph attached as an exhibit in the Georgia case." My son picked up the envelope. She reached across and placed her hand over his. "Honey, this is your father trying to come between us. This is what he does. This is what he's always done." I looked at my son then. Really looked at him the way I used to when he was a kid, and I was trying to figure out what he wasn't saying out loud. He was staring at the envelope. His jaw was working slightly the way it always did when he was doing math in his head and something wasn't adding up and he didn't want to admit it. "Shane," I said, "I drove here tonight because I am your father, not because of a check, not because of any agreement. If you had called me 3 years ago just to tell me you were getting engaged, I would have driven to Knoxville and brought nothing but myself, and that would have been enough for me. All you had to do was call." He didn't look up. I stood, buttoned my jacket the way I always do before I walk out of an important room. Set 250s under the edge of my water glass for the server who had nothing to do with any of this. "Whatever you decide," I said, "I love you. That isn't conditional on anything in that envelope or anything on that document, but I will not be signing anything tonight." I walked to the door without looking back. The drive home to Maryville takes about 25 minutes on a clear night. I took it slow. The lights of downtown Knoxville faded in the rear view, and I drove through the October dark with the heat running low and the radio off. I didn't feel like a man who'd accomplished something. I felt like a man who'd just read a measurement to someone and wasn't sure the measurement had landed. She was going to talk him out of it. I knew that the way you know certain things about ground conditions before you break soil, not from certainty, but from enough years to trust your read. She'd tell him the records were fabricated or misattributed. She'd tell him I was controlling and bitter, jealous of his happiness, exactly the man his mother had always described. And he might believe her. He'd believed a version of that story about me for 3 years already. I got home, made coffee I didn't drink, and sat in my living room in the dark. If you've been with me since the beginning, leave a comment right now. Tell me where you're listening from tonight. And if you haven't subscribed yet, there's a button below this video that would make my Thursday night a little less quiet. What's coming next is the part I still have trouble saying out loud. 6 days after the dinner, I was in my home office going through old survey files when my phone rang. Unknown number, Tennessee area code. It was my son. His voice was different, stripped down to something beneath the usual register. Flat in the way voices go flat when a person has been awake too long and cried themselves past the point where crying helps anymore. "She's gone, Dad," he said. "She cleaned out the joint account, $28,000. I closed the folder in front of me and just listened. He'd opened a joint account with her 3 months earlier. For wedding expenses, she'd told him. It's so much easier to manage everything from one place. He'd moved in his savings, money he'd been building since he was 24, a little at a time, the kind of disciplined saving I'd tried to model for him when he was growing up. $28,000. She'd transferred it out in 3 installments over 4 days following our dinner, through a linked external account he hadn't known existed. Then she'd send him a single text. "I can't do this. I need space. Please don't contact me." The engagement party venue had already charged the non-refundable deposit, $6,000 on a credit card in his name alone. By the time he called me, her phone was disconnected. Her apartment, in his building, the one she'd moved into 4 months ago, to be closer, she'd told him, was empty, not ransacked. Just empty, the way a place looks when someone never accumulated anything they weren't planning to carry out in one trip. The Knox County District Attorney's Office received his report 2 days later. The Ohio man, when someone finally reached him, confirmed the pattern was letter for letter the same. An attorney told my son it could take many months before charges were filed, if they were filed at all. The money might never come back. $28,000 gone, a $6,000 credit card bill. 3 years of silence before any of it. He sat with all of that for 2 days. Then he drove to Maryville. I heard the knock at 8:17 on a Thursday evening. I know the exact time because I just looked at the clock on the microwave. I was heating up soup, the kind of mundane detail that feels wrong to mention but is somehow exactly right, because that's how the large moments actually arrive. Not announced. Not with any ceremony, while you're heating soup on a Thursday night. I opened the front door. He was standing on my porch in a jacket too thin for October, hands shoved into his pockets, looking at somewhere around my collarbone rather than my face. Not the posture of a man who came to demand something, the posture of a man who has simply run out of places to stand. "Hey, Dad," he said. That was it. 2 words. I stepped back and held the door open. He came inside and sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd read his text the first night, where I'd built the case in the manila envelope, where I'd sat in the dark after Sullivan's and asked myself what kind of father watches his son walk toward a wall without warning him. And what kind watches him hit it without being there on the other side. I turned the soup burner down and sat across from him. "I read the envelope," he said. "That night after you left. I sat in the parking garage for an hour and read all of it. Okay. She said you'd paid someone to fabricate it. What did you think? He was quiet for a moment. I wanted her to be right. He pressed his thumb against a scratch in the table surface, a scratch that had been there since he was 12 and dropped a model airplane kit. I've been wanting her to be right about a lot of things. I let that sit between us. I should have called you, he said. 3 years ago, when the investment thing fell apart. I knew 6 months in that it was garbage. I didn't call because I didn't want to give you the satisfaction of being right. I listened without rushing to fill the silence. Some silences need to be fully felt before they'll release anyone standing inside them. I'm not angry at you, I said finally. I want you to know that first. I was for a while. Then I got past angry and landed somewhere quieter and sadder, and that's where I've stayed. He nodded at the table. What do you need right now? I don't know. The savings are gone, the credit card. I don't know how I'm going to manage it. I don't have anyone else. That last sentence cost him something visible. Your mother? I started. I haven't told her yet. She'll say it was my own fault for trusting someone you didn't approve of. He almost managed a partial smile. She might not be wrong, but I can't hear that version right now. I got up, turned the burner off entirely, brought him a glass of water he hadn't asked for, bought us both a small moment to breathe. Here's what I wanted to do. I wanted to write him a check, not for $75,000, not because anyone had demanded it, but because he was sitting at my kitchen table looking like something essential had been removed from him. Something he hadn't known he was going to miss until the moment it was gone, and 29 years of loving that kid doesn't switch off because 3 of them were ugly and cold and silent. But I have learned, slowly, the way engineers learn when a structure has failed, that what someone needs and what actually makes them stronger aren't always the same calculation. I'm not going to pay off the credit card, I said, and I won't replace the savings. He looked at the table. I know. Not because I don't love you, because you're 29 years old and the only way you learn that the ground holds is by standing on it yourself. I have no interest in watching you collapse. But if I keep the fall from happening, I'm not helping you. I'm just making sure the next fall is higher. Yeah. What I will do. I got up and took a business card from the kitchen drawer, one I'd had since September when I was going through my own particular kind of hard quiet. I'll pay for a therapist. 6 months of sessions, fully covered. She's good. She works with men, all ages. She won't just ask you how things make you feel and write it in a notebook. She'll actually work. He took the card and looked at it. And I'd like to have dinner on Sundays, here or somewhere nearby. No agenda, no accounting of who said what to whom or who owes who what. Just dinner. He was quiet for a long time. When he finally looked up at me, his eyes were red in a way that took me back 20 years. The afternoon he'd wrecked his bike in the driveway and tried his hardest not to cry in front of me. He'd cried anyway. So had I a little after I went back inside. Dad. Yeah. I'm sorry. 2 words again. Same weight as the 2 words at the front door, but pointed in the opposite direction. I reached across the table and put my hand over the back of his. Not long, just long enough to mean it. I know, I said. Sunday 6 o'clock. He left around 9:30. I stood at the window and watched his truck back out of the driveway and disappear up the street. Then I washed the soup pot I'd never gotten around to using and put it away in the cabinet. I did not feel like a man who had won anything. I want to be clear about that because it would be easy to shape this story into something cleaner. The vindicated father, the lesson delivered, justice served on schedule. But sitting alone in my kitchen in Maryville at 9:30 on a Thursday night in October, what I actually felt was the specific exhaustion that comes from carrying something heavy for a very long time and finally setting it down somewhere, not yet sure if the ground where you've set it is solid enough to hold. He came to dinner the following Sunday, and the Sunday after that. The third Sunday he stayed until nearly 10, and we watched football on the old TV in the living room, and he fell asleep on the couch for 40 minutes. I turned the volume down and didn't wake him. Just sat there in the chair across from him in the lamplight, the way I used to sit in the car after a long drive when he was small, and had fallen asleep in his car seat, and I didn't want to move him yet. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if the woman who took his money will ever face consequences that mean anything in a real sense. I don't know if my son and I will rebuild what we had before the years went sideways, or if we'll build something different instead, something that fits who we've both become now, shaped by the years and the silences and the hard lessons we each had to learn the full cost way. What I know is this: the work is in front of us, and we've both agreed to show up for it. In 34 years of surveying land, I learned that you don't know what you're building on until you've walked every inch of it yourself, measured it twice, and decided it's worth building on anyway. We're walking it together. That's enough for right now. If this story meant something to you, hit that like button and leave a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from tonight. And if you haven't subscribed to Dad's Pure Revenge yet, there's a button right below this video. Take 2 seconds and hit it. I'll see you in the next one.